Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to this presentation on tolerating the impulses of envy and lust. This is based on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14. Let us begin. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshuram Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Once again, a very, very warm welcome to everyone on this presentation. It's an important topic, which is tolerating the impulses of envy and lust. And as I had said, it's based on a pastime from the 3rd Canto, 14th chapter. In this chapter, we encounter the story of Diti and Kaśyapa Muni. And this encounter basically, it reveals how unchecked envy and lust can lead even advanced personalities to act against scriptural injunctions. And by examining this episode, we hope to gain some insights on how to overcome those powerful emotions and stay rooted in our lives in Dharma, though it may not be easy. Let us begin. We will first begin by setting the stage. So essentially, in this particular pastime, there are two characters and there are a few more characters who are there, but the story revolves around these two characters. Kaśyapa Muni, who is a great sage and progenitor, and he is responsible for populating the universe according to the Vedic principles. And then there is Diti. Diti is the daughter of Prajapati Daksha. And in this pastime, she notices that her co-wives, who are actually her sisters, who are also wedded to Kaśyapa Muni, they have children and becomes envious because of their opulence. This envy fosters a very strong desire to Diti to conceive immediately. But as I mentioned in the slide, the time is the inauspicious evening twilight. And it is explained in the verses here that it is during this time that Lord Shiva and his ghostly entourage roam. And there are scriptural injunctions that discourage conception at such a moment due to the potential negative consequences. In the purports, Śrīla Prabhupāda emphasizes how the misuse of any time or situation under the sway of lust inevitably leads to undesirable outcomes. Also, being envious of anyone, and this person may be righteous or may be demoniac, is fraught with risk. You may ask why. I think first we need to accept that not a blade of grass in this world can move without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. And the same holds true of also all our actions and our experiences. Take for example, our neighbor is having a new car. He has got a new car while I have a very old car with me. Should I become envious of that? Possibly I will, because I am under that influence of that material energy, which is creating or triggering that envy. But that is very dangerous, because by becoming envious of my neighbor, I am in fact becoming envious of Krishna. For it is with Krishna's sanction, after all, that the person got the car. We are forgetting that. And so a very important saying to keep in mind is, Jako mare Krishna, rak sakhe na koi, Jako rakhe Krishna, mar sakhe na koi. And we have seen this in numerous incidents. We are but the instruments in the hands of the Lord, just like Lord Krishna told Arjuna in the battlefield, that you are just an instrument in my hand. So net, both envy and lust are very, very dangerous for spiritual seekers, and we need to always remain very, very alert. In the 11th verse of this chapter, Diti laments upon seeing the opulence of her co-wives. She says, Tad bhavan dhayamanayam sapatinam samriddhibhi, which is seeing the opulence of the other wives, she is feeling distressed, or envy is arising in her. And this growth of envy in her heart makes her impatient. The jealousy evolves. And this jealousy, it fuels an urgent desire that eclipses her regard for auspicious timing. It's not that she doesn't know, she's a very well-learned person. But that jealousy that has fueled in her heart has eclipsed, it has covered, it has made her forget about the importance of the auspicious timing, and also about what Kashyapa Muni is doing, that he is engaged right now in a spiritual activity. So envy here acts like a seed that sprouts into other unfavorable emotions, particularly lust or kama. So you can call that envy is a key catalyst. It is acting as a catalyst over here. That first of all blinds one to spiritual reasoning. Rather than appreciating her co-wives, her sisters' good fortune and following prescribed guidelines, she becomes competitive and starts pushing. This competitiveness actually starts pushing her to act hastily. So please keep in mind that envy can lead to a host of unhealthy desires. Eventually, it will culminate in lust-driven decisions. I mentioned about the timing, which was inappropriate. And despite the fact that it was the evening twilight, which is considered off limit for such activities due to the roaming of ghosts presided over by Lord Shiva, Diti was completely overrun by lust. She remained undeterred, and she compelled Kashyapa Muni to comply. Now, contextually, it's important to understand this, that Lord Shiva, as mentioned in Prabhupada's purports, happened to be the younger brother of Kashyapa. And Kashyapa warned his wife that because Lord Shiva would see their sex indulgence, the time was not appropriate. But Diti might argue that they would enjoy sex life in a private place. But Kashyapa reminded her that Lord Shiva has three eyes, called the sun, the moon, and the fire, and one cannot escape his vigilance any more than one can escape Vishnu. He uses the analogy of a policeman. He says, although seen by the police, a criminal is sometimes not immediately punished. The police wait for the proper time to apprehend him. So the forbidden time for sexual intercourse would be noted by Lord Shiva, and Diti would meet with the proper punishment by giving birth to a child of ghostly character or godless, being a godless impersonalist. So Kashyapa Muni was already foreseeing this, and he warned his wife Diti. He said that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that should not encourage her in offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that eventually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. So now one might think, Kashyapa Muni was a greatly learned and enlightened soul, after all. And he knew all these rules and regulations of a systematic life. Yet he failed to protect himself from the attack of sex desire. And we have seen other examples also. For the example, Vishwamitra Muni, when he was meditating and Menaka comes, his meditation is broken and he falls down. Now contrast this to another personality, Thakur Haridasa. Thakur Haridasa was not born of a Brahmana family, nor was he himself a Brahmana. Yet he could protect himself from such an attack, when there was a prostitute that was sent to him to seduce him. He was able to protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. So there are two things that we see in this. One is, of course, the strength of Maya. Let us not underestimate the strength of Maya. And the other is the shelter of the holy name. If we are not taking the shelter of Krishna, Maya will capture us. We need to remember that. In the 30th verse, we read that Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Prabhujis and Matajis, this is an awakening call for us, that such evolved souls like even Diti fell down when they got caught by Maya. So you might think that if such a spiritually advanced soul like Diti, who's the daughter of a Prajapati, can fall victim to Maya, then where are we? We are also bound to fall victim to Maya. Yes, as long as we are in this body, the only way we experience everything around us is through the five senses. And if we don't keep the senses and the mind in check, Maya will be there waiting to capture us. And how do we keep all of this in check? The easiest and the best path that has been shown to us is Bhakti. Look at how Haridas Thakur transformed the prostitute to in fact become a devotee. In Bhagavad Gita 3.37, it reminds us, Kamayesha Krodesha Rajoguna Samudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidyenam iha vairinam. Lust that is born of the mode of passion is an all-devouring sinful enemy. Prabhupada says when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. In the 16th verse of this chapter, in the 3rd canto, 14th chapter, it is mentioned that Diti's mind was contaminated by lust. So she overlooked Kashyapa's warnings regarding the inauspicious timing. And this is the effect that envy and lust can have. They may start in small amounts, and gradual build-ups will result in us covering our entire consciousness and self-awareness, pushing us into that mode wherein we might be completely ignorant about what we really need to do. So in this story now, lust and envy combine to now overrule her intelligence, which will lead later on to dire consequences for the universe. Śrīla Prabhupāda in his purport to the 16th verse mentions that when a man or a woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kashyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words expressing impossibility, but he was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. Vidura is addressed here as a hero because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. It appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words rather than being forceful. So this highlights how lust can eclipse even scriptural knowledge and warnings that might come our way from very wise people, leading to future calamity. Let's continue. Now, Diti persisted, Kashyapa complied, and what was the consequence? Of course, Kashyapa warns Diti first that her offspring will be malevolent. And eventually, Diti gives birth to two demons, Hiranayakashipu and Hiranyaksha, who unleash terror upon the universe. And Śrīla Prabhupāda explains in his purport, he says, Diti neglected all the principles of scriptural injunction. And therefore, although she was very anxious for auspicious children, she wanted auspicious children, she was informed that her children would not be worthy to be the sons of a Brahmana. So here again, it is clear that a Brahmana son is not always, first of all, a Brahmana. We need to keep in mind that personalities like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu were actually born of Brahmanas. But they were not accepted as Brahmanas because their fathers did not follow the regulative principles for their birth. And so such children are called demons or Rakshasas. So we need to keep in mind that unwanted progeny due to unregulated lust can have long-term disastrous effects. Not just personally or in a contained way, this can, as in this case of Hiranayakashipu and Hiranyaksha, it was a universal impact. So according to Vedic society, there is a suitable auspicious time for sex life, which is called the time for Garbhadhana. We need to follow this. In Bhagavad Gita 1.40, Arjuna says, Adharma bibivat Krishna pradyushyanti kulastriyaha streshu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna shankaraha. which is when irreligion is prominent in the family of Krishna, the women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of the womanhood or descendant of Vrishni comes unwanted progeny. And in this case, we have Hiranayakashipu, who's an extreme embodiment of envy towards Lord Vishnu. He persecutes his own saintly son, Prahlāda. And then the other one is Hiranyaksha, who challenges the Lord's Varaha incarnation, disturbing the cosmic balance by taking earth into the depths of the ocean. Through these births, as I mentioned, the entire creation is impacted, as emphasizing how personal decisions, personal envy and lust can ripple into universal turmoil. Now, there was some redemption also in this whole episode. And we know that. So despite this inauspicious event, at the end, we see that a great devotee, Prahlāda Mahārāja, would be born in the same lineage. And we will also be given a little bit of insight into why. Now, Kashyapa Muni tells Diti, he says, because of your lamentation, penitence, and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and your adoration of Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahlāda, of your son Hiranyakashipu, will be an approved devotee of the Lord. And his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the personality of Godhead. So we see Krishna's mercy at work here. Krishna's mercy can manifest even amidst the darkest of circumstances. One sincere devotee can purify an entire family line. And Prahlada's example reminds us that genuine devotion, Bhakti, always triumphs over demoniac tendencies like envy and lust. So in short, what begins in negativity can still yield spiritual gold, provided there is ultimate surrender to the Lord. As we see over here, when Kashyapa Muni tells Diti that it was due to her lamentation, penitence, proper deliberation, and the unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That saved her and the lineage. So the Lord's mercy transcends sins. So overcoming envy and lust, of course, is not easy. And I'm sharing over here a few examples in terms of what we could do. But also I'll also share a bit of a real life example so that you're able to better relate with this. It starts with acknowledging the root. The root of the problem needs to be acknowledged. And envy often will mask itself in subtle ways, such as constant comparisons or dissatisfaction. And we might not understand that it is actually envy within us that has been triggered. We might be mistaking it for something else. So recognizing it early prevents it from growing into that destructive lust. So let me share an example over here. Imagine two colleagues, Amit and Rahul, for example. I'm taking their names. So they are working in the same company. Amit notices that Rahul consistently gets appreciation from the managers. He gets promotions. And at first, Amit is feeling a slight discomfort, but then he brushes it off. However, over time, what happens is he begins comparing his achievements with Rahul's, and he feels dissatisfied with his own performance. So initially, this subtle envy manifests as small complaints in Amit's minds. Like, why does Rahul always get recognition? Maybe he's just lucky, or he has better connections. Now we need to keep in mind that unchecked envy leads to lust, desire for power and recognition. So instead of acknowledging and resolving this envious feeling, Amit unknowingly begins to feed it. It's like putting ghee into a fire. He starts competing aggressively now, not to improve himself, but to outshine Rahul. He craves now for more recognition, appreciation, and position, and start developing an intense ambition, which is not fueled by anything else but by insecurity. And eventually he begins to take shortcuts, manipulating data, undermining Rahul's work, spreading negative rumors just to go ahead. So this is how envy, if not recognized early, can morph into destructive ambition, lust for power, success, and status, leading to us doing wrong things. The alternative path, of course, is recognizing envy early, as I have mentioned earlier, acknowledging the root, and then doing something else. Like, for example, here Amit instead could have practiced gratitude, appreciated his strength rather than comparing. We never do that. We are never empathetic towards ourselves, appreciating what we have. Rather, we see only the glass as half full and see what others have and what we don't have. Developing healthy competition is also possible in this case. Rahul should see this as more motivation rather than as a threat. When we start seeing it as a threat, that is when this whole entire thing gets triggered. And lastly, focusing on self-improvement. Instead of craving for power, focus on how you can improve yourself. So the same pattern can also apply spiritually when one devotee compares himself or their spiritual progress to another. It can lead to jealousy, excessive ambition, or even offensive behavior. So recognizing envy early allows us to channel our energy into bhakti instead of material desire. Number two, we need to, of course, practice the Vedic injunctions. I've spoken about the Garbhadana Samskara, so that we ensure in such instances like conception, auspicious circumstances are chosen. And seek a higher taste, involve a structured spiritual life. It will provide guardrails that help you channel your desires. In Bhagavad Gita 2.59, Krishna says, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasa varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. By experiencing higher spiritual pleasure, the lower impulses of lust and envy naturally subside. So let's begin chanting the holy names, engaging in devotional service, and associating with pure devotees. This will give us a higher taste. So some takeaways for us. So like Diti, we may sometimes act out of envy or lust. Recognizing our error is important, and seeking Krishna's forgiveness can open doors for us for a transformation. Prabhupada mentions in his purport that Diti's late repentance still paved way for the Prahlada's advent. Let's ensure we keep good association, staying close to devotees. This will help us detect subtle envy or lust. And their guidance can help us realign us so that we are in the right guardrails before impulses start escalating again. And let's be consistent. It's very important. It should not be one-off bhakti practices, but consistent bhakti practices, regular chanting, doing regular shravanam, regular studying of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. These will serve as a spiritual kavacha for us against envy and lust. Prabhupada emphasizes that daily reading of his purports keeps our intelligence sharp and spiritually grounded. So in summary, Diti's envy of her co-wives escalated into an all-time union-driven lust, resulting in demoniac offspring. The pastime of this Diti and Kaśyapa, it is a big learning for us on how lust and envy, if unrestrained, can bring about individual and not only individual, cosmic turmoil. And despite her errors, we saw that the mercy of the Lord manifests in Prahlāda Mahārāja, shows us that devotion or bhakti can flourish even amidst the darkest and darkest of periods. And Prabhupada's purports also tell us an important thing on the path of repentance, higher taste, and devotional service that can rectify grave mistakes. So please keep this in mind also. And we can protect ourselves from envy and lust by adhering to scriptural injunctions, fostering a devotional mindset, and associating with sincere devotees. So the path of bhakti can elevate us from the lower impulses to the realms of pure service to the Supreme Lord. Let's remember to cultivate humility and remain vigilant against envy and lust, always seeking shelter in Krishna's holy names. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Hare Krishna.